Good evening. We're going to open up with prayer this evening, so if you'll bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we're here before you once again to ask your guidance and your wisdom for our local body of your glorious church. We thank you, Lord, for your blessing on us, and we know that in ourselves we can do nothing. So we offer all that we are to your leading. We've been fervently praying that you would prepare the way for greater expansion of the ministries of Beulah, and we can see the working of your hands. We thank you for our pastor who seeks your face and your vision and works tirelessly to bring it about. Our earnest prayer is that we would wait when you say to wait, and that we would move when you say move. We want to be in your timing and not ours. Help us to be in step with you and your will for us. Please grant wisdom and guidance to the ones who have leadership roles in these motions that we're presenting, and may our goals in these endeavors be to spread the gospel, bring in lost ones, and to disciple all until Christ be formed in us. May we all say and do, may all that we say and do be to the glory of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and in his name we pray. Amen. Well, good evening and welcome to this special business meeting of Beulah Church. We're glad that you're joining us tonight, whether you're here in person or by live stream, as we have these very important issues to bring forth to our church family. We have 3 presentations, and we are asking that you hold all questions and comments until all presentations are made. Then we'll entertain your questions and comments. If you're following by live stream, you may text questions to Ginger Sites at this number that you see on the screen, and we will respond. If you're present and have a question, please wait until I've got to change my wording here. Please come up to the mic here in the center. We'll turn it around for you to ask your question so that the people that are on live stream can hear your question. That may make them ask a different question. As it was printed in the bulletin this morning, the motions will be presented as follows. Motion 1, it is moved that Nick Windich be invited on staff at Beulah at the rate of $300 per calendar week beginning January 1, 2022, under direction and discretion of Rob Jones, Senior Pastor. This calling is twofold. Nick will begin his responsibilities as youth pastor on January 1, 2022, and he will begin training as assistant pastor on that same date. Nick will evaluate Beulah and Beulah Nick through the first quarter of the year. Nick will generally work 2 days a week, including Sundays, as a bivocational minister. As the church is able, Nick's dedicated time to Beulah will increase with the intention that he eventually become full-time at Beulah. Motion 2, it is moved that Chris Lowe and his Beulah member designees, which are Ron Jenkins, Mike Allen, and Rob Jones, enact the necessary means to secure a building loan of $300,000 from People's Bank at the best rate and schedule possible for the benefit of erecting a new building that will house a gym and a Christian education space. Motion 3, it is moved that David Livingston and Norman Fulks co-lead the construction of the new 100 by 100 foot building on site according to the plans put forth by the building committee. General oversight support of this project will be vested in Rob Jones, Mike Allen, Ron Jenkins, and Chris Lowe, that group, as representatives of the will of the church family. The purpose of this group is to alleviate continual business meetings when decisions are needed that could impede the progress of the construction. So, with that, I will turn it over to the first presenter, which is Rob Jones.
Yeah, okay, good. There you go. Now I'm ringing a little bit, so there you go. We're getting adjusted. So hopefully everyone can hear at home or whoever's joining us remotely. Motion number 1 has to do with Nick Windich. As you know, it was printed in the bulletin this morning, and it was just read to you again. And Nick is a rare find. He has Bible college education, and he has years of experience. He has not served as a pastor, but he has served as a youth pastor. And I'm excited that he's here because we desperately need a youth pastor. And in the future, we're going more and more and more need an assistant pastor as time goes along. So I will be working with Nick over the next several months, and doing some training on the pastoral side of things for pastoral theology. So now I'm here to entertain any questions that you have. And Nick, some may come to you. So if you want to ask Nick a question, you can do that. All right? Anyone have a question? Really? Oh, that's right. I was supposed to wait. You're better than I am. Thank you for waiting. So at the end, we will do that. And thanks for reminding me, Paulette. Oh. Right. Now, the way this is going to work with Nick is that he and I are going to be working together every Monday morning on the pastoral training side of things. At the end of the first quarter, we will evaluate him and he will evaluate us and see how we're getting along, how things are progressing, and hopefully we will find out that we can support him more and we'll get more of his time. It's an amazing situation that God has brought about. But he works for Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A are very Christian-oriented people, and so they're willing to work him when we're not working him so he can support his family, and in a progressive way. In other words, if we use him for 2 days a week and they use him 4 days a week, then that will change at the end of the first quarter if we can do that, which is what we want to do. So anyway, that's my presentation. So which one's next? Chris? I think you're next.
Hey everybody. Forgot my glasses, so I brought my laptop so I could see, and I hope you can see. We just made it a little bit bigger a little bit ago because we saw how small it was once we actually sat in here. So I'm going to present some information, want to present a few details about the motion, a few financial figures. That way you can see. Nick, you're not the only one. So I want to just present some information, that way you can see, put a few charts together just to try to give some visuals of what our financials we expect them to look like or anticipate them to look like going forward in the future, just for some financial information prior to our vote. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so as Rob mentioned, we did investigate many banks. We explored many banks. We had many bank representatives here talking to them about their different rates, their different options, what their terms would be. We did settle on People's Bank. They were able to offer us a cash out or refinance loan option at a 20-year rate. Now that is fixed for 5 years. So after 5 years, it is important to note that we are subject to a change in rate. Personally, I hope that we have it paid off in 5 years if we go forward. However, that is an important detail, and in this changing financial environment we're in as a country, it is important to note that those 5 years. But what they are able to offer us is a 3.69% APR. If you just put that in a simple amortization chart, as our shrewd contractor Norm has done, we've settled on a $300,000 figure, and we're able to do that. Thank the Lord based upon how much we've grown our building fund. So because of how much we've grown and been able to put in the bank and have ready to go, and again, Norm really looking at what our costs are going to be and trying to project those forward. We're projecting out $300,000 is what we'll need in addition to what we've saved. That $300,000 over 20 years comes out to a rate of just over $1,700 per month. Next slide. Next proposal is for our associate or youth pastor. We agreed on $300 per week. It comes out to an average of $1,300 per month, which is at the salary rate that we'll make those payments. Next slide. So here's some information. I hope this is helpful, and if you want any specific figures, I'll be happy to tell you what those are because it's impossible to see what they are. But the data that we took goes back to October of 2020, the beginning of fiscal year 20. And we have our total gains, total expenditures. And when I say total gains, I'm talking about our tithes and offerings, online giving, versus total expenditures. All money that's went out for utilities, salaries, ministries, everything is accumulated into that total. So what you see on this chart, and the reason I wanted to present it in this way, is that you can see the far left begins October of 20 to December 21. December 21, just for record, is an estimated projection of where we'll be in a week from now, but it's pretty accurate, within maybe $100 I would project. So you can see that we've been very fortunate that our total gains have exceeded our costs over all months, with the exception of April 21, which is typically when we get our building insurance premium payment, annual payment for the year. So that's pretty common that we kind of zero out in that month. But otherwise, you'll see that we have exceeded our costs in every month for this 15-month period. And what's very encouraging is the last 7-8 months since March, when we've pretty well exceeded it and have been well above what our expenses have been. Expenses are typically pretty steady on a monthly basis. Next slide. So just to kind of put it side by side, this very complex bar graph. The left or green side is our gains, the right side is our expenditures. This is an average for that period. So the average gains for that period, that 15-month period, has been $10,265.47. And the average expenditures for that period has been $6,131.97. So as you can see, just from a visual perspective, we've well exceeded, on average, have well exceeded what our expenses are to what we've been bringing in as a church. Okay, next slide. So it looks a little different when we add in a $1,700 building loan. That red line inches up a little bit closer. Your green line is exactly the same as it was on the last chart. Red line inches up a little bit closer. So in this projection, we're adding in a $1,700 building loan per month. This is on past data, if we had applied that. So you can see over the 15 months, there would have been only 1 month, again in April of 21, that we would have had not gained enough to cover our expenses for that 1 month period. Next slide. Again, the middle line moves a little bit closer towards the top, and the far right bar is just that difference of the two columns. So again, we are projecting, with adding in the building loan monthly payments, still exceeding what we're bringing in as a church. Okay, next slide. So let's add to that some more. Let's add in our youth pastor payment, salary payment. Again, the red line has now gotten a little bit closer. It has overcome what we're bringing in on a monthly basis, but I want to emphasize that we are still, over the last 6, 7, 8 months, we've changed a lot as a church. We've grown. I think we've seen what we need to do in order to continue to grow. And so we're still, we would still be exceeding what our expenses would be for most months. Again, in June, it almost balances out. And if we can go to the next slide, again, it gets a little bit closer. This leaves a difference, on average, for this 15-month period, it would leave a difference of $1,063.50 per month. And next slide. So not sure if you can see this or not, and I apologize, but just bringing in the last amortization schedule, again, we would have paid in interest over that 20-year period $124,000, over $124,000. If we would apply that $1,000 excess that we were just looking at in the last chart, if we would apply that over that 20-year period, we would cut our interest in half. I know there are a lot of other variables. There are going to be added costs, residual costs as a result of having a new building. We're going to have additional insurance, utility expenses, and so on. So to say that we just take that extra $1,000 on average that we expect and apply it is a little bit, maybe unrealistic. However, just taking the information we have, we could consider that as applying it directly towards the loan. And if we were to pay it off over 20 years, we would cut our interest rate in more than in half. If you cannot see it, interest, if we applied that extra $1,000 a month, would be $65,239 in interest, a savings of $59,000. So good savings to apply that extra rate. I personally hope and pray that over the next few years, hopefully 5 years maximum, we're able to apply every bit of excess that we have. And again, I hope and pray that we will grow as a church over this as a result of these big ventures we're taking on, and which will lead to more gains in our church anyhow. Any questions, or we want to save all questions till the end? Any questions right now based upon just the figures, the numbers that were on the screen?
Chris, I appreciate your presentation. That's not a question. And I have a question. It's hard to have a question with there you go. The presentation you made, the charts and everything, I just appreciate that. Was so informative. I've been trying to think of a good question, but you pretty well covered things. I just wanted you to know I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I always say, for what you're not good at, learn how to pretend like you're good at it. So, David, do you have a question?
I might say too that we paid this off in 5 years. Now
Yes.
this is a whole lot more than what this was, but we can do it. There's a lot more of us. Yes.
Norm, how much do we borrow on this building?
I'm all for paying it off early. Do we have an emergency fund? What do we have to stand by for heating, air conditioning, things like that break?
So we reserve $45,000 a month in an emergency fund right now. That $45,000 is almost equivalent to what would be 6 months if we did not receive any tithes and offerings. That $45,000 is what we dip into on months whenever we do not receive enough offerings to cover our expenses. But typically, we're able to reserve that $45,000 every month. And then anything in excess of that, we've been applying directly to the building fund, which has been in part to the growth of our building fund over the last year and a half. I believe in October of 20, when this timeline began, I wish I had this information exact, but we were around $78,000 in our building fund balance. And so in 15 months, we've grown it to, I'll know better in a week, but we're going to exceed $200,000 in our account by next week. So it's pretty incredible. The banks were very impressed when they saw the rate we were growing. I actually talked to Steve Wayne. He's one we've been working with. And I told him recently, I said, Steve, you better get moving because we may not need you before too long. And when he saw the rate we've had, the growth we've had over the last couple of months is when we started the loan process. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if we have any more as we go along, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say. You can look at the, Michelle, have you got our, this is a very first draft of what we hope the building will look like. It's close. The layout is really close. There will be an 8-foot separation between the two buildings. It comes out as a big cost savings not to have to move a lot of stuff. Then they'll still be 10 foot behind the new building. But this is basically, there's copies out in the lobby out there that you can look at if you want to see it up close. And we just didn't start talking about this last week. We've had several people here that have been into this for more than 2 years. You know, we're not just jumping into this thing hoping that we know what's happening. Now, these costs, Michelle, if you'll put that next. These costs, I got to tell you, is for the most part, a lot of it is a guess, you know, but it's an educated guess. The building cost for the kit is what it's going to be, and for erecting the building is going to be close. But there's a lot of variables in the rest of that stuff. You know, things have really changed since this building was built. So, but you know, I've asked questions. David Livingston has asked questions. So, you know, we think we're really close on all these things. We may get a little surprised, but what we're hoping is when we were making guesstimates, we guessed high. You know, so we're hoping that some of this will be lesser than what we thought it might be. So, but, you know, we're ready to move forward, you know, at your all's pleasure. So that's about all I got.
What he just mentioned, the building we anticipate to cost $500,000. We've saved $200,000. We borrow $300,000, and that's how the figures work up in the big scheme of things. So that's our estimation. I, first of all, thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate you coming because this is very important. We're going to talk very realistically tonight. We have reason for optimism, as Chris told us, and you can tell that we have very professional people doing things here. Norm knows what he's talking about. Chris knows what he's talking about. And sometimes I know what I'm talking about. But if you're at home and you want to text in questions, you see on the screen the number that you text. She will forward your questions or comments to us, and we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about things that you're concerned about or questions that you have. So I appreciate that very much. Now let's go circle back on the presentations, and let's talk about Nick now. And if you want to ask questions directly to Nick, he's very personable, and he's willing to do that. So what kind of questions do you have about Nick or about what Nick's going to be doing? Anybody? We've already answered all the questions? Yes, Susan. Thank you so much for coming to the mic. We appreciate that.
I actually have two questions. I'd like to know what your plan is, like how you plan to work with the youth, meetings, what kind of plans you have. I also have a question about financial. I wanted to know if the $200,000 that we had gotten for the building fund, is that included in our giving on that graph chart?
Did you pick up that on the microphone? Her question? Okay, great. So state the last part of it again.
I wanted to know if the $200,000 that we've collected on the building fund, if that has been applied to that graph that he showed us in the giving, that is, how the graph goes. Does
Chris,
that make sense?
how do you answer that? The answer is yes. Chris says yes.
The answer is yes. Okay.
That's our total revenue.
Okay,
So,
but
yes.
you still feel like that people are giving extra at that point because of the need, and is that going to be something that people will have to continue to give extra? Is just, do you understand what I'm saying? Right.
So we had a big conversation back in May about what we can do as a congregation, how we can contribute more to our tithes and offerings in order to meet our goals. I don't think your question is necessarily this, but if we were to say, can we go back to what our regular rates were, what we were giving before, the church would take a hit, it would affect what our earnings are. I hate using those terms, earnings and revenue and things, not to put in those terms, but you understand what I mean. But the church would take a hit if we were to cut back from where we were. So what we projected earlier in the year, we were trying to figure out how we could make a $2,300 a month payment, because that was what that's what we projected a $400,000 loan to be. Now being $300,000, it's a bit less, $1,700 a month. We were trying to figure out where we could get that $2,300 a month to make a monthly payment. So we asked the congregation, we say, can you make additional contributions of $50 a month, $40, $30, $10? And the church responded, and we took that information, and it came out to a bit over $1,000 extra per month. I think that figure's probably gone now, because we've done well more than that. So the church responded more than what we were projecting from that data request that we were asking for back in May. But your givings are what's going to drive this church to make these payments and to continue to. But however, I think we are blessed as a church, and we are meeting our obligations, and I think we'll continue to meet our obligations. But obviously our giving is very important to that. Does that help answer?
I just wondered if that money was being included in your grant.
It is, yes, and that's everything we have. The only things that were not included in that were our yard sale we had, the bazaar money. All those funds went directly into the building fund, and some money did go into the building fund as well. But that was all captured in these charts as well. But the only thing that wasn't captured in this was those big funding drives that we had. I didn't want to skew the numbers because that was, we had a $10,000 endowment not long ago. I didn't want it to those things aren't going to be regular occurrences. So those were excluded from those figures. But otherwise, everything that you saw was strictly giving from the congregation.
All right. Thank you for your question. What was your name? Susan. All right. So the question was, what is your plan with the youth? Like, kind of what's the idea? Now, I know Rob has said that the youth have been meeting on Sunday evening. And so I would keep that as for now. But obviously, I'm going to be working with Rob to kind of talk through if that continues. Is that the best set? And we'll kind of work through that. One of the things that I'm kind of been big on is I really hate to come to a new place and say, here's how it goes. I've figured it all out. You do this, 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 and this. I have a couple principles that I know that I would abide by, which is all the youth from me and Melissa would, from the start, from the get-go, even now, standing here today, even not voted yet, they would get from us honor, dignity, and respect. We would respect who they are as students, as children of you. They'd get that to start with, I can tell you that. The second thing that I would do is, and this is something I've noticed even in my own life, is a lot of times we assume where people are in their journey. And so I don't want to assume on any of them where they are as far as where they are on their journey with Christ. And so my first thing that I would want to do is trying to get to know them, because I want to know, where are they? Where are they? Just because they show up here doesn't mean that they know Christ, doesn't mean that they have an understanding and depth of what Christ has done for them. A lot of times people say, I've been saved, I've been baptized, and then they're trying to live the Christian life in their own strength. So honor, dignity, and respect from the get-go. And then the second thing is really just trying to figure out, where is each one of these students on their journey? And then I'm going to try and plug in along with your culture. See, I've got to figure out, what is it like to live in Rome, and what are the things that they're dealing with, where they go to school. Me and Rob talked about having lunches with them during the week as much as possible, just to kind of get to know them. It's really difficult to just walk in and say, here it is. So those are kind of some of those things. And as far as when will we meet, right now I know it's a Sunday night thing. I wouldn't change that right off the bat, but I don't know, maybe there might be a better night, but we would stick with that. And I'd probably start with just getting to know me. Let me get to know you, and then we walk into some Bible studies. I've got different things that me and Melissa have learned and practiced over the years that are kind of basic things to kind of help understand where people are. A lot of it's questions. What do you think about this? When you read this, what does this mean? How do you take that? And then that kind of helps me know where a student is as far as depth or understanding. So, does that answer? Does that help? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Now, what we've asked Nick to do is to respect what we've been doing, because we have youth workers, but I've told our youth workers too that it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You take the puzzle and you put it all back in the box and you shake it up and you start over, and that's what's going to happen. Yeah, but Nick is going to put the puzzle pieces back together, and over time we're going to see the congregation grow, because when you bring young people, you bring parents, you bring grandparents, and so forth. The congregation will grow through this. As the congregation grows, that feeds into the finances, and so on and so forth. So theoretically, the way this works, it all works together. Now, Nick is not only going to do youth work, but he's also going to be assistant pastor. Now, over time, I'm 72 years old. I've had open heart surgery, and my health has been good, and the Lord's blessed me that way. And I want to work a long time, but I don't know. So Nick is the backup guy, and we're getting him ready in case he had to do some backup work. And over time, he will do more and I will do less, simply because of my age. And that's the way it's going to be. In other words, it's kind of a succession plan. However, it's not a given that Nick's going to one day be the senior pastor. I mean, what will God do? I don't know. I don't know what God will do. But we're not leaving anyone in the lurch. We're planning. We're working toward the future. We're laying down a good base, a really good base. And so that answers that part of it. He is not arriving with a package. This is what I'm going to do. Here's my 10 points. Nor do I want him to do that. I want him to come in and know our culture, know our people, fall in love with us because we're lovable. I know you're lovable because I know you. And as he gets to know us and our nuances, then he'll know what works and what doesn't work and so forth. One of the things I'm looking forward to Nick doing is a lot of outreach. In other words, going to the school, going to the school cafeteria. I've already talked to the principal at the middle school. They said, yeah, we want him to come in and speak. I mean, we're doing that work so that we get out there and do outreach and draw more kids in here and have a comprehensive program. I should say that the people who work with our youth have been, they've hung in there for all this time that we've been trying to grow. And I take some encouragement for the fact that this past year and a half has been so difficult because of attendance issues, because of COVID. But if we do this well in the light of COVID, it makes me think we can do well when we emerge out of COVID. So I'm hopeful that way. But let me say this, I'm just, as pastor to you, I obviously made a big point about people participating, and it's going to be really important. Part of the weakness of our culture at Beulah is that people have put great confidence in the leadership here because we've been very unified, things have gone very well, we paid off the building in 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's been very nice. It's been an ideal kind of situation, and we praise the Lord for that. But the endeavors that we're talking about tonight are not like the endeavors where we elect one another to fill official roles in the church. These are obligations that are major obligations. We are obligated to Nick's family. I mean, we have integrity on the line to take care of this young man and his family if we ask him to come. But we're not biting off more than we can chew. He's going to work for us 2 days a week, and I'm sure he's willing to do whatever. But for the first quarter of the year, Nick and I are going to be working very closely together. And he's going to be learning the culture here. And so it's going to be kind of like, if I can use the analogy, we're going to date. And then about Easter time, we're going to get engaged. And then in about a quarter after that, or whenever we can, we're going to get married. Now, our obligation to him, what we're offering to him, is a serious offer to him to come. One of the things I'm asking the congregation to do is not use the term, we're hiring Nick. He's not a hireling. He's a shepherd. I so much appreciated what he said this morning, because it's a whole different thing when you're pastoring. It's not like other employment. You know, we don't say, well, we told you we'd do this and that's all we're going to do. I mean, shepherding is a big job, and there's a lot to it, and availability is expected. There's the first mile and then there's the second mile. And so Nick will be in the throes of that. We as a church have to set forth our integrity in this, and that we do what we say we will do. I don't want to bring up the bad side of this, but we need to be realistic, and it's only fair that I do this. If we make this obligation, this promise to the bank and promise to Nick, and we move on down the road, I have every expectation that this is God's leading, because we prayed and I see amazing things that God's done. And so I'm very optimistic. But to give you a daymare, imagine this building being a Dollar General store. We don't pay the debt. Now, that's really an ugly thing to say, but we need to say, this is serious, what we're doing. It's just as serious as when you take out a mortgage in your house. It's expected that you make the payments. We not only want to make the payments, we want to pay this building off in 5 years. I mean, we're going to make new goals, and we're going to grow, and we're going to continue on. The key to our growth is going to be competent leadership and unity in the church family. Those two things are critically important. We will grow, and we will continue to grow. We will grow and grow and grow. The only thing that will keep us from growing is if we don't believe God, because he told us how to do it. He told us what to do and how to do it. Now, if we just do it, we'll be okay. But I'm emphasizing right now that what we're doing here is very serious. And so we want to take it seriously. I take this message to the entire congregation. It's very important. 25 or 30 people are not going to pay for this. Everybody has to be involved. We share together as a family in this, but we need to make sure everybody's obligated. Now, that brings me to the point next that next Sunday morning when we vote, in case you don't know how this works, tonight is our discussion half of the business meeting. Next Sunday morning is the voting half of our business meeting. And in the bulletin, you will get a ballot, and it will have these three separately listed where you can vote for or against. And there'll be a place on there for you to write down whether you're a member or not a member. We will count the members, but we want to know what the non-members think, because we have a lot of people who visit here regularly. And we still want to know what they think, but it carries no weight as far as what we're going to do in the future as far as our obligations are concerned. So I've talked about several things there. You can see what we're talking about is very serious. And so if the plan works the way the plan's supposed to work, the congregation is going to grow, the finances will increase, the number of people will increase, and we will need this building that we're going to build. This building will be a tool for increasing our congregation, just like soccer has been. That will be true here too. All right, so I took the liberty to tell you all those things that are very important as your pastor. So now, do other people have questions? Come on up, Norm, go to the microphone. It's important to go to the microphone because we want people who are watching remotely to hear what's going on.
Just a thought. I think a lot of people are concerned, which it crossed my mind too, about taking on two big things at once here. We're talking about bringing Nick on. We're talking about building this building. Everybody likes to get their biggest bang for their buck. Nick would be a great addition here, just in this building for our children, or the new building alone would be a great addition for Beulah. But the two of these together will absolutely really do the best for us. We've got a place for him to do his thing in for our children. So, best bang for our buck is two things. That's all I got to say.
Now, I hope you have a lot of questions. Thanks, Norm. I hope you have comments and questions, because we need to thoroughly vet what's going on here. And anyone else, just go to the microphone. Yes, Serena, if you will. I appreciate it.
Okay. I would like for Nick to share with us how he came about being in this position to be considered a youth pastor here at Beulah Baptist Church in Proctorville, Ohio. And I know the story, but I'm not so sure that a lot of us do. And to me, it's amazing when you hear the story of how we got to have. In fact, my sister-in-law, who lives in Gallipolis, heard about this, and she said, "You're getting him? How in the world? Look, Beulah Baptist, you're getting him?" So would you care to share a little bit? Okay.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. No, yeah, Rob, when we had a leader meeting, said, "Man, we've looked all over the country, and he's the guy." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I hope you." So, like this morning was so quick, I couldn't tell the whole story, and I don't even want to do it tonight. But I will say that the reason that we are here, did I even say we're from Atlanta? We're from Georgia. Melissa and I. Or I wasn't born in Georgia, but we were raised in Georgia. We've been in Georgia our whole lives. And the church that she grew up in, Melissa and I had come, at some point had come back to this church and worked with a guy that was the youth pastor. He was a Sunday school teacher, moved to youth pastor, and I took over the Sunday school class. A few years later, we went into missions overseas. We were in Turkey for 5 months until they told us we couldn't stay. Then we ended up in Kosovo for a year and a half, so about 2 years. And while we were there, this guy that we knew would bring his youth group over. And so we'd have youth groups coming to Kosovo and doing missions and stuff together. And so we came back home. I moved to another part of Georgia, worked with Chick-fil-A again for about 2.5 years, and was doing part-time youth ministry. And it was I guess me and him were keeping up with each other. Just, "Hey, you're youth pastor, I'm youth pastor. Let's get ideas and stuff." And one day he said, we were just talking in the middle of the conversation. He said, "Hey, I have a question." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Is West Virginia too far from your family?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? Wait, what? Why are you wait a minute, what's going on?" And he said, "Well," so this gentleman was the youth pastor at Canova. He had been called from Georgia to come be the youth pastor at Georgia. And so the pastor there, some of you may know him, was Steve Wilson at the time. Willis. Anyway. And he said, "Yeah, he asked me to find a college pastor." He said, "What do you think about college ministry?" And I said, "John," I said, "1, I've never been to West Virginia. 2, I don't know anything about college ministry. Do you really think this is a good idea? Like, why do you think I need to be here?" And, he gave his reasons, and I said, "Oh, okay, maybe." I said, "I don't know if he knows me as well as he thinks he knows me," that kind of thing. It was right in the middle this was in February of 2020. So I got that call. I said, "Babe," I said, we had already been feeling about full-time ministry. We'd come back home, back to Chick-fil-A doing part-time, and we were like, "Man, I think the Lord really is really called us to be in full-time ministry." but where we were at was a real small church. I was new there, and so I was just kind of hanging out and doing youth and saying, this is where I'm here to serve, and I'm fine with that, you know. So he calls back a week later and says, hey, never mind. Everything's, you know, we're on hold. Things are getting crazy up here. And so long story short, they call back a month or two later and said, all right, we're ready. Come up here. I was like, oh, my goodness. So me and Melissa drive up. We meet with the staff, and, we felt that this was the Lord was leading us in this direction. So we come up, and we're going to be the college ministers at Canova First Baptist Church and Legacy, which is like the church plant. Sorry, I'll make this quicker. So we got on staff. So what you need to know is Steve Willis left. So their longtime pastor had gone. He'd taken another job in, I think, Tennessee. Then COVID happened. And then the church plant that had been there, the pastor there was ready to move on. And so he left and started another place. And most of that congregation went with him. So we had pastor leave, COVID, and somewhat of a church split. And I come in, me and Melissa come in as college ministers of the new church plant. And so we spent, that was in July of 2020. John, my buddy, was now kind of pastoring and doing youth pastor, and we were thinking, this is great, this is wonderful. And so we started, I really don't know, how does this person at Gallup Police know me? Why? So but anyway, I don't know if it has something to do with college, but one of the things you asked was, what's your plan? And kind of the same thing was true here. I came in, I'm like, I don't have a plan for college ministry. I mean, because I don't know, I've never been to Virginia. I've never been to Marshall. I've heard of Marshall. Isn't there a movie or something? You know, it's kind of like that idea. So I had to come in and kind of figure out what's going on here. And what John said to me was, I said, I still don't understand why you think I'm the guy. He said, look, I've talked to a lot of guys. They're super smart. They got a lot of education. But you have something that they don't have. I'm like, I don't understand. What is it? He said, well, what he said is the church thinks that they need a guy to come in and like 100, 150, 200 college kids, boom, and everything. What they really need is someone to gather, someone that's going to be at peace and start small and kind of grow. And I was like, okay, you do know me better than you thought. Because I'm not when he talks about just booming out the numbers, I was like, I kind of like to start down here where we're at and kind of let the Lord kind of lead in that. And so what that situation did is it put us in a place where there was a little bit of tension between the former church that had left. They had their own college ministry on campus. You also have BCM. You also have Campus Crusade. And so I thought, well, good night. Here we come. We're going to be the fourth wheel in this thing. And so I felt like we've got to figure out how do we maintain the students that we have and try and reach out to others without being in competition on campus. Because the last thing that Marshall University needs is a bunch of Christians squabbling over each other and fighting. I just can't stand that. It looks bad. And so what we did is we decided to pull back and use our building that we had. We had a pretty decent building. It's right off 20th and 7th. I don't know if you've ever been over there by Marshall, but old warehouse that was turned into a coffee shop. And so I told Melissa, I said, look, I don't know what all's going on college campuses and how many days a week they're doing stuff. I said, so we might have one shot with them. We might have one night. I said, I think our best bet, and we prayed through this, we talked about it. I said, I think our best bet is if we could get Acts 2:42 in one night. Now, Acts 2:42, you should know this, is when the church was being formed. It said that they met together regularly for fellowship, breaking of bread, prayers, and the instruction from the apostles' teaching. And I said, if we could get all of that in one night together, that's our best opportunity and chance to do that. And so we chose Tuesday night. We did dinner every night for the college students. We said, look, you come, we're going to feed you, then we're going to fellowship. We're just going to hang out for a little bit. And then we'll move to another section, and we'll have music, we'll pray, and then we'll do a teaching. And it just started because there was no real other options left. And it just, the Lord kind of, as you're praying and deciphering, the Lord will kind of help you see that. And so that was where we went. So I'm assuming that's where we were. I don't know. But anyway, that went on all of last year. And I'll tell you, Melissa will tell you, it was great. Like, we loved it. The greatest part of the week was coming on a Tuesday night and seeing college students and just walking with them, talking with them. Find what's going on this week, how's the exams, and then kind of getting in when we would pray. We'd break up into prayer groups and they would pray together. I let them lead their own prayer groups and let's do that. So, but what brought me here was, in the midst of all this, we still had no pastor at Canova or at Legacy. And then my buddy John got a call from the church that we came from, and they said, hey, listen, our pastor's retiring. We want you to come back and be the pastor. And so I was like, oh, man. I was excited for him, but I was also like, oh, that's, he's, at that moment, that time was kind of one of the families that we knew. But we really did grow close with a lot of families. We did small groups and kind of jumped in there. But the circumstances surrounding why I'm here is, after a year of doing college ministry, what I realized was that was my first, and now this is going to sound strange when I'm up on the stage going, hey, 25 years of this and that. I didn't mention all of those, every one of those except for missions, I worked Chick-fil-A full-time. So all those were part-time things I did on the side. So I'd never been in full-time ministry, like day-to-day, all the ins and outs. I just would lead Sunday school class or do college or not college, but singles or as I'm working a job. And so this was my first time being in full-time ministry in the States, like here. Missions is a whole different beast. I can go into that another time. And what I found was, with no pastor at either location and a lot of change and everything, I was like, I don't really know. I've done this, and this, and I realizing I don't really know what else needs to be done and things and there was no direction. There was no plan or vision or anything. And so I struggled with that a lot. And coming from Chick-fil-A, where you come in, you clock in, you've got this, what you do all day long, and then you clock out and you have a task at hand, it was a little bit difficult for me. And so at the end of the year, we evaluated last May. I told Melissa, I said, listen, I love this. I'd love this college students, but I feel like ultimately the church doesn't know where they're going as far as leaders and those kinds of things. I think we could step back and go back to work, save them that income. I can still lead Bible study and work with college students. And what we were talking about too is I felt like I really need someone to kind of mentor me. Like, I need someone who has experience, a pastor who could kind of just, I don't know, talk to me about all the other things that are involved in ministry. I'm up there at the campus all day long by myself and not sure what's going on. I've got ideas about different things, but that part I didn't know. So we did step down. I talked to the leaders. I said, listen, I'm willing to stay and serve. Me and Melissa love college students, but we, at this point, with no pastors in place, no vision or leadership, we feel it would be best if we just serve voluntarily. I'll go back to work in the secular environment, and we'll continue on like that. And so it was in that time frame that I was put in touch with Rob, and we had lunch one morning. The funny thing is, I called Rob on a morning when I was going to Tri-State Bible College for an interview, and I was like, this is weird, but I'm getting ready to have an interview with the Tri-State Bible College, but I can have lunch with you afterwards. And so we went and had lunch at Wendy's here in Proctorville, and then came back over here and walked around. We talked. I felt like I think you said, I think it was in this parking lot, you said, I don't know if, I might misquote it, but you said, you're an interesting guy, or something like that. And I was like, thanks. I don't know if that's good or bad. And I think what you were relaying was, it's interesting the place that you're in and the place that we're in. And I remember thinking, that is interesting. Like, here I am. I mean, I've got years of experience, but I'm also saying I'm still ready to learn. I want to know more. I want to grow. I want to know more. And he's saying, we need help with youth, and I also need this, and these are the things. And so I think that was kind of, I don't know if I'm doing this justice, but that is kind of the circumstances surrounding how we got to this particular place right here. And I'll be totally honest with you. When Rob talked to me, I mean, we had already thought, man, I don't know, are we supposed to go back to Georgia? Like, do we go back home? Because both sets of parents are 30 minutes from each other. They're in their 70s. They're showing signs of different things. And we thought about it. We prayed about it. We had a guy, an old friend of mine, call. He called and asked if I'd be the youth pastor at the church I got saved at. We went and interviewed. But honestly, we really kept thinking, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Like we want to stay in this area. The Lord brought us up here. We don't know why. Things haven't been what we thought at this particular thing, but it didn't change our heart for this area and for, I don't know how to explain it. So then when meeting with Rob and talking with him, we started to, you know how it is. You're asking the Lord, is this your will? How do I know? Could this be it? And you just keep walking, and you keep praying, you keep seeking, ask, seek, and knock. And that's kind of where we were at. And I think you were probably asking and seeking and knocking as well. And so here we are. Fair enough? Is that good?
So Nick and I are going to have a mentor-mentee relationship for a while, just so he can get ready to do what it is that God's going to have him do in the future. And I'm going to do some pretty intensive training. And, well, you know me, he doesn't. Man, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. But I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll be a challenge for me, but it'll be a challenge for him. And he's really going to grow over the next few months, and we're going to grow too. And that symbiotic relationship is very important, that we grow together. Thank you, Nick. See how well-spoken he is? Yeah, he's a good guy. All right, other questions? Yes. Somebody's texted in. That's great.
So do you know how much of the monthly money shown on the graphs was designated for the building fund? So that accounted for all tithes and offerings, money that was designated directly for the building fund as well. So that accounted for all of our gains, with the exception of what we talked about earlier, those special offerings that we had, the yard sale and things. So yes, that accounted for all giving that we received as a church for that period of time.
Okay, thanks for the question. Whoever texted in, thank you. If it doesn't answer your question, text again. We'll keep doing it. That's great. All right, other people have questions or comments. David Sheets. David retired this week, so he's feeling all...
I agree with your plan. I like your plan. But worst case scenario, you can get a 5-year loan. If we would have to go, what kind of rate can you get if you went longer with the fixed loan rather than just 5 years? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a 20-year loan. It is a 20-year loan, but the terms that we were able to get does have a constituency to it of the rate being subject to change after 5 years. Now, that's not uncommon in a loan of this size. And I believe the market has some impact on that as well, and the way that the bank will loan. It also is a factor that we are a church, so we are not an LLC. We're not a big corporation. If we were to go under, the bank, there's nobody that is at the end of the rope for that loan for the bank. So banks do take on. They assume that there is more risk when it comes to churches, and this is just a factor of that, or a result of us loaning to a church. So it's pretty common for that reason.
Good question, David. Thank you. Yes, sir. Kenny.
What's the timeline on this? We break ground and when we can use it?
When will we get in the building? Yes. We will break ground, if the weather permits, we'll break ground in March probably. It'll take about a week to 2 weeks to put the shell up, believe it or not, and then we'll probably spend the summer putting the guts in it. What do you think?
It's always longer than you think, but
Okay. If we get to break ground in March, you know, it's going to be 6 weeks at least getting the site prep and getting ready. You know, the concrete will go quickly after the site prep is done. You know, we'll have the building, we'll make a down payment on the building. They will create the kit. This is a kit. And they'll create the kit and have it ready. You know, I will get the contractor that will be erecting it, you know, I'll get him obligated, you know, to a time that we can do this. They put this building up in 7 days, 3 guys. You know, I anticipate 2 to 3 weeks on this bigger building. And, you know, after that, it's just, you know, just making sure we can get the contractors and the people in here to get the work done. We stumbled a little bit on this building because the contractors were slow, some of them, but with David's help and the other guys' help, you know, we'll be right on them. So, you know, we're going to use this building sometime next year, you know, late summer, fall. We won't let it go any longer than that if we have to do it ourselves.
Thanks, Norm. This building is a kit, that building is a kit. So as this building looks, that building will look, but it'll just be a lot bigger, all right? My simple way to say it. Yes, Paula?
Fancy.
Yeah.
No embellishments. I would like to say this. When we talk about the building fund, and it used to always, whenever we would say our goal is $200,000, and I'd say, why are we saying that? Why don't we say our goal is $250,000 or $300,000? Because I was always afraid that, you know, once we hit the $2,000 goal, we quit putting money in. We quit seeing that need. So I would encourage people, because we can always use money in the building fund. If we don't have it here, we can get it from the building fund. So if you want to keep giving and you designate it to the building fund over your other offerings, go for it. And we, you know, when we built this building, we did different drives for different things. Now, we're not going to be having a chair drive or things like that, but, you know, when there was a need, we'd say, hey, you know, pay for your own chair, buy an extra chair, whatever, and people give. We have a very giving congregation, and I thank the Lord for that. But don't quit giving to the building fund just because we see that the building is going to get underway or we're borrowing money for it. Keep giving.
Our goal is going to be pay this building off.
Amen.
Quick.
I guess maybe, you know, I think Rob caught it there, is when I called it a kit, actually all that means is this company, you know, they pre-make part of this. They pre-cut the metal, you know, and they do all those sorts of things. You know, it's not like an erector set or, you know, Lincoln Log, but you know, they'll pre-make part of this. That's why it gets put up in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, is because this stuff's done, you know, before they come here to put it up. So don't let the word kit, you know, throw you off. That's what, you know, that's what it is. It's pre-work.
Thank you, Norm. The third motion that is set before you is that David Livingston, who is home tonight sick, he was going to do the presentation tonight, but he's got a bug, and we're praying for you, brother. He's watching right now. But he and Norm are going to be co-leaders of the construction. That's what that motion says. And behind them will be 4 people who will work as a group, a committee, and that will be myself and Cal and Mike and Chris. And we together are going to represent the congregation if things come up. In other words, we're trying to set it up so that we don't have to have a business meeting every time that something comes up. What you're doing is vesting your authority in those 4 people to proceed with the process so that it doesn't slow down, so we don't have to stop and have a business meeting. Because when we have a business meeting, it takes a month. We have to announce it, educate everybody what's going on, then have the meeting. When we have a meeting, that's 2 weeks. So that's why it's put together the way it is in that motion. All right. Other questions? Dave McComas, you look like you're ready to spring.
My wife Brenda is not here, so I can ask the cornball questions without embarrassing her, unless she's watching. I have two questions for Nick, and I have one for Norm and Dave. Nick, did your buddy John inform you when you came into this area that you set your watch back 20 years? The other one is when we have a function here, can you help us out on the Chick-fil-A? Anyway, you don't have to answer that. Well, he wanted to know he wants to get to know people. Norm and Dave, I attended one meeting, and I've tried to follow along with what was going on with the building. That's electrical is my past, but after today, it really dawned on me that when John was baptized, is there any provisions or possibilities of having a baptistry in that 8-foot?
Hopefully portable.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Hopefully, Rob will be on top of that, but probably in this new thing, at the end, we'll see how the money goes. I don't know how much a portable one costs, but, portable baptistry has been brought up here more than once. So, yes, it's on our mind, and yes, I think it could happen.
It's a good question. Really good question. And David's comments and questions are educated questions. He's a master electrician. So when he attends a meeting, he helps us think more deeply. I appreciate that. Other questions? Yes, Rena, you'll need a microphone. There you go.
I didn't mean to put Nick on the spot earlier, but we have been praying fervently for a youth minister in this church to build our youth for two to 3 years. And our workers who work with our youth have done a marvelous job, but they themselves, we need a youth minister. And I just wanted you all to know that God's been working on this. And when he was sharing, he came from Georgia to Proctorville. That's just amazing. And, God knew. He
started out in Egypt and went across the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And then,
but God has brought him here through these different paths, different circumstances, knowing where he was going to end up. And to me, how could we not bring him on? To me, that is just God drawing us a picture. Here's your man. And I just really appreciate him sharing with you his journey, how he got to be here.
Amen. Other questions? Thank you, Rena. Anyone else?
I can't help but when you were talking about you got a call from Rob and then you were on your way to a Tri-State Bible College interview, you just getting a call back after that and they say, sorry, your interview's been canceled. Somebody called us. And you get a call from Rob and he phoned in and got your interview canceled. No, that didn't happen, but might have been divine. This whole process of our building and talking about youth pastor, just from my perspective, goes back, like Rena said, years. And I remember about 3 years ago, Rob brought it up. He said, we're going to build a new church. We're going to build a new building. And at that time, it was almost just talking about a gym, relatively small gym, but something we could have functions in. I thought to myself, oh, man, okay, all right, we can do this, looking at our figures and things. All right, we can pull it off. We were just paying off. We may not even paid off this building yet, but I thought, okay, deep breath, we can do this. And then we started talking about a bigger building, and the building got bigger. And then prices went up. And we kept driving on. And, I'll be honest, I was a nervous wreck the whole time thinking, all right, are we going to be able to do this? But, I had faith in it. And then the topic of hiring a youth pastor came up. How are we going to do this? Is this even possible? And I just kept praying, God, do not let these two things come down at the same time. And boy, did they. And I have no doubt that it's not a coincidence at all. Norm, you touched on that a minute ago. I have no doubt that it is not a coincidence that we are doing these two things at the same time. And I think they're both vital for our church, that they are happening at the same time. So the building, you've got my vote. Nick, you've got my vote. I've told you that. I told him I'd be his campaign manager if he wanted to run for office. But you guys, I'm all in, and we can do this. So feel good
Thank
about
you,
it.
Chris. Our vision is that our grandchildren bring their grandchildren here to church and find faith. And we believe in sustainability. We're biting off a lot, but we're just following the Lord. That's what we're doing. And that'll be fine. It'll be great. Yeah, everybody has to take a bite, though. That's right. Yeah, everybody has to be in on this. So it's very important. So I will mention something odd that I'm going to do next Sunday morning. I'm going to have people from the back to the front bring their ballot up and put it in a box right up here. Because we have had the history in the past of people just blow it off. It's very important that everybody participate. And so if we were an Episcopalian church, it wouldn't matter because everything's done from the top. But we're not an Episcopalian church. We're a Baptist church where everybody has to join in and take responsibility. We're not a top-down church, and I've been trying to emphasize that. That's something that's very important. We'll emphasize it next Sunday too. So bear with me next Sunday morning. It will be a little laborious to do it that way, but we need to do it that way. So we'll do that. I'm so sorry Melissa couldn't be here tonight. One of Nick's kids became ill today, and we're praying for her. God bless her heart. And so normally Melissa would have been here. Patty, you have a question? Will you talk in the microphone? Well.
Okay. All I wanted was to know, because Roger's having surgery, so we won't be here. So what do people do if they can't be here to vote? Because we want to vote, but we can't be here.
Our policy is that you have to be here to vote because of voter integrity. However, I think this is so important we need to make an exception. So if you will put in writing what your vote is and submit it to myself or to the clerk, the church clerk, Michaelin, if you'll and Ginger Sites, if you'll do that, then we will consider your vote to be valid. Because there are some people who can't be here next week. They just can't be here next week. Rogers is a medical issue. He can't be here. And so there are other people too who I know already have to go to Florida. There are things that are planned. So if you're in that situation and you want to do that, we're going to break policy. The purpose of a policy is so you don't have to make the same decision over and over again. But sometimes you may need to make an exception to a policy, and this is one of those times. So does that answer your question? Put it in writing. Anybody else here who can't be here, put it in writing, and what your name is and what your vote is on those three issues and whether or not you're a member. And make sure Michaelin gets it, and we'll do it that. Does everybody agree? Can I take a consensus? Everybody agree? Do it that way? Don't just sit there, say yes, nod your head, or do something. Okay, great. Okay, very good. All right. Other questions or comments? Yes, Miss Bonnie, come to the microphone, please. Bonnie Wireman, here you go.
This is about the building. Is there any way we can use volunteer workers on the inside to save money?
Well,
I mean, like professional.
what are your carpentry skills, Bonnie?
Not very good.
Yes, Norm and David will try to take advantage of all possible free labor. But, you know, you have to be able to drive a nail if you're a carpenter. And, you know.
Everybody knows when I build this building, I make Lincoln squirm, so you can count on him squirming again.
There are things we can do. We can paint. We can do things. There's things that we can do. We will do it. But good question, Bonnie. And what about that guy you're married to? Will he help us? Absolutely. Okay, he got volunteered. All right.
I've always said, a woman in 5 seconds can give you a month's work.
All right, very good. We have another question that came in by text for Norman. Thank you for investing your time tonight, by the way. I know this takes time, but it's very important. Thank you so much.
The question is about parking for the new building. Yes, there is plans for new parking. You know, we have to be careful about new parking because of our soccer program. So we will, once the building is up, and there will be some additional parking come along with the new building, just not a big parking lot. Our preliminary plans is to gravel this whole side down, including the new building. But at some point, yes, as we grow, the amount of cars that's here grows. So we will be following up with additional parking with the thoughts of the least interruption to the soccer program as we can do. So new parking will come.
Yeah, and I might just say that those of you who are familiar with how soccer works, we've been using the lower field for parking, and that's kind of the idea right now, is that will be converted to parking so that we don't impede on the soccer program and other programs that we could use for that field for. So thanks, Norm. Good. Anyone else? Really? That's good. All right. You have a week to think and pray about this. That's one of the reasons why we do it the way we do it, is you have a week. During the week, you'll think of a question. I wish I'd asked this. Well, you can still ask it, because we're not going to vote till next Sunday morning. So there are people you can ask. You know who to ask, and you have the week to do that. Norm has set up a table in the foyer. It's in the foyer, right? And the paper plans for the building are on that table. Anytime during the week, you can come and look at it. Wednesday night, we'll be here. You can come and look at it so that you can get maybe other questions that you have answered too. So those are basic plans. They're going to change a little bit. I'm repeating because he's not on a mic. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Norm. Okay, I love you guys. We're going to do this together, right? And it may require some special sacrifice on our part from time to time. I'm hoping that our church congregation gets used to regular, proportionate giving rather than impulsive giving. It's what we need to do in the future, but we'll get there, and hopefully that's where you are already. So it's important. All right. Anyone else?
What better way can we spend our money, old people, than for our children and our grandchildren?
Amen.
Can't take it with us.
The way you grow a church is you target the youth. And when you target the youth, you get the parents, the grandparents, and other people who are interested. And that's part of the strategy with Nick. We're targeting the youth. And that doesn't mean we don't love old 72-year-old gray-haired people like myself. We do love them. But as far as our target and where we put our ministry effort, that's where it is primarily. All right. I think we've exhausted everyone. So anyone else? You don't want to cut anybody off? Paulette, if you'll come and close our meeting, you can do it with right there if you wish.
Well, I hope we've talked about and thought about. Now this week we can really pray about. We've done a lot of praying for both of these issues, new building and youth pastor. And God does things in his own time, in his own way. And if he wants to let this happen at the same time, which obviously he does, who are we to argue with him? Let's be dismissed in a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this time that we've had together, Father, and we just thank you for your many blessings that you give to us each and every day. Lord, we thank you for the meeting that we have held here. We thank you for bringing Nick to us. We thank you, Father, for we're excited to see a new building being built with all the possibilities that it holds for us for spreading the gospel and being a lighthouse in our community and where that may lead in the future. We just thank you, Father, for all that you do. We just ask that you would watch over us, be with us, protect us, and guide us, and bring us back at the next appointed time. We love you and praise you for all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.